Good evening, ladies and gentlemen who have joined us on this Dr. Fundi platform, joining us via, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and also the Dr. Fundi website. Today, I have a special guest, Dr. Kgosi Letlape. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Dr. Kgosi Letlape before I tell you why he's here today. All right, Dr. Kgosi Letlape is a qualified specialist ophthalmologist. In fact, he was the first Black African to qualify as an ophthalmologist in South Africa during the apartheid days. He's a man of first because he was also the first Black person to be elected at the World Medical Association as a president. He's a founder of the African Medical Association, that was in 2006. He's a former chairman of the South African Medical Association. I've already mentioned his involvement with the World Medical Association, that he's a past president. He's a former executive director of the Tepang Trust. Now, this is a trust that was formed during the dark days when South Africa, the government was still dragging its feet with regards to the provision of ARVs to patients. And he was part of the people together with the Nelson Mandela Foundation who made sure that there is a solution to ensure that people have access to ARVs. He also serves as a member of the Global Hygiene Council. However, today he is here wearing the cap of being the president of the Health Professions Council of South Africa. Kgosi, welcome to the Dr. Fundi channel.
Thank you for the invite, and good evening to those of your followers and the viewers and the listeners.
Thank you, Kgosi. I'll just call you Kgosi. I won't make it too formal so that we can converse nicely. All right, Kgosi, the reason why I've invited you to be my guest today is the fact that on Wednesday, this past Wednesday, one of our colleagues, a specialist anesthetist, Dr. Abdulhay Munshi, was actually murdered, this in the context of the fact that he was a co-accused in a legal case following the death of a young man or a young boy in the care of another doctor, Dr. Bill, who is a pediatric surgeon. So there is a lot of gray area around what happened. But the reason why I invited you is because as the president of the Health Professions Council, you were obviously contacted by the media and you are reported to have condemned the killing of Dr. Munshi. You even said, we do not want to create a climate of fear for doctors, whereby they will be scared to deal with patients, who may be high risk in case there may be repercussions of vigilantism against those doctors. So, Doc, whilst we're going to start with this part, but I want us to go back to where did this all start? We know that it was reported last year that both Dr. Bill and Dr. Munshi were charged for culpable homicide. We also know that the host hospital group actually suspended them from operating from their premises. So maybe let's start at where did this all start?
It all started with the fact that a young boy lost his life related to a medical procedure, undergoing surgery, and there was a problem with him coming out of the anesthetic, and the child was lost. They were not able to resuscitate him or revive him.
Yes.
We then just got it in the media when it was out there that there's 2 doctors involved. They've been suspended by the hospital, and there was a media frenzy around that issue.
Yes.
Now, I will start now and go back. And in my reflection, what has happened condolences to the family of Dr. Munshi. It is a sad day for the profession. And as I've been reflecting on this in the last few days, this has weighed heavily on my heart. Yes. And my sense is that this is the George Floyd moment for the medical profession.
Yes.
Just like what George Floyd represented was a knee on his neck as a black man. And it represented the challenges that blacks face, not just in the US, but globally, not just on white knees. In Africa, it's on black knees. It is that moment for the medical profession where we have to fight for our dignity, fight for our survival, and fight to be able to practice medicine safely, without fear. Not that we become unaccountable, but without fear.
Yes.
Now, what puzzled me and what puzzled us is that doctors were suspended by a hospital, but they were not reported to us by the hospital.
Is that something that is usual, Doc, to have a hospital just unilaterally, deciding you're no longer going to practice from our premises?
Well, I would view it as unusual because in my more than 30 years practicing in private, I haven't experienced that, and I haven't seen that occur with any of my colleagues. But it does not mean it might not have occurred anywhere.
Yes.
But here's what is frightening about this circumstance. When you as a doctor bring a patient to a hospital, as a private doctor, you have a patient that is yours, you bring the patient to a private hospital for a procedure, and you have an anesthetist that works with you as a surgeon.
Yes.
The patient is serviced by all three parties.
Yes. It's a tripartite,
It's a tripartite relationship.
Yes.
And the patient is the recipient of service.
Yes.
Now, when you have a procedural death, an inquiry has to be instituted with all three participants accounting for their part in the treatment of the patient.
Yes.
So the surgeon, the anesthetist, and the hospital need to account.
The host hospital.
It becomes puzzling when you have an incident like this, and the hospital, which should also account for its responsibilities in the treatment of the patient, suspends the partners in treatment. Firstly, they have no authority in terms of the professional acts of the people. The hospitals have a right to accept you to work in their premises or not accept you.
Yes.
But once you work there, you are an independent practitioner. For your professional acts, you do not account to them.
Yes.
And here's a gap in our system.
Yes.
The hospitals don't account to anybody. They are a law unto themselves. They are highly capitalized. They have huge purses, but they don't account to anybody. Because properly what should happen when you have a procedural death is that an inquest docket should be opened. And all the people that participated in the treatment of the patient have to file their statements in relation to their participation in the treatment of the patient, how it went, and if there's any mishap that happened, any accident, any complication, and they need to report fully and disclose.
Yes.
The police
so in this case, then, this one party out of the three almost assumed a superior role of actually making that kind of decision, even before.
And it's clear lawlessness.
Yes.
It's clear system failure in the country, where if your pockets are deep, laws don't apply to you.
Yes.
But it is also a betrayal from the hospitals in the partnership that they have with practitioners, where we work together to provide services to the people of the country. It's a betrayal.
Now,
But
just on that,
here's
on that. Yeah, okay. Continue, Doc. You can continue.
The key issue is that if all of us have to account, if all of us had roles to play in the treatment of a patient and an undesirable outcome where a patient has died, all of us have to account. None of us have any authority or any ethical stance to suspending other participants, because it violates the notion of professional autonomy of doctors and their responsibility for their own actions. And the fact that we are self-regulating and there's a statutory body which registers us, which gives us the privilege to practice and which hold us accountable.
Yes.
And which protects the public.
Yes. Just on that point, Doc, for healthcare professionals, medical doctors and other healthcare professionals, there is the statutory body that you are a president of, which is Health Professions Council of South Africa. Now, for the hospitals, the private hospitals, from a regulation point of view, who is the regulator for hospitals? I know that there is an association of hospitals, but the regulator from a Healthcare Act in South Africa, do you perhaps, can you share some light in terms of who is supposed to be regulating?
There's a gap in that regard. Their licenses to practice and run their businesses are issued by the Ministry of Health.
Yes.
Either at the national level or at the provincial level. But having issued a license, there's then a big gap in our society where there's no regulatory body or a statutory body that they answer to. So that there's conditions for their licenses, there are conditions to be met, etc., etc.
Yes.
So you get a license and you're on autopilot.
Yes.
You're running a business. You're not accountable to anybody. And the authority is there, but it's not exercised.
Yes.
It's not clearly articulated.
Yes.
Okay. And when there's disasters, it may be exercised. You saw when we had COVID.
Yes.
And we had private hospitals that had extremely alarming infection rates.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
That they were closed down.
Yes.
But it was not like the minister could close them down. They had to close on their own.
Yes.
Because if the minister said close them down and they refused, it would create a crisis. Just like the 2008 nightmare when President Thabo Mbeki was recalled. If he refused, it would have created a constitutional crisis. Yes. And because of his ethics, he put country before himself.
Yes.
But these are the gaps that exist in our society where it looks like other things are left on autopilot. And some structures seem to be too important or too rich to be regulated.
Are there no parallels in this issue of what you've just mentioned now about the hospitals with a similar issue where there had to be an inquiry by the medical schemes regulator after groups of doctors, Black Indian doctors complained that they are being victimized, but this time it was not hospital groups, but it was medical schemes, and it also pointed to enforcement of regulations. So I'm just saying the issue of the regulatory environment for the various players within the healthcare system, it seems like there is an issue there.
Yes, and I mean, we have a problem. This is a serious threat to the profession, the behavior of the hospitals and the conglomerates. They've been trying for years to want to employ doctors.
Yes.
Now, this should be warning bells for society that should not be allowed.
Yes.
Can you imagine what the situation would be if the late Dr. Bill may his soul rest in peace, and Professor were employees of the hospital group.
Yeah.
Okay. What would have happened on this matter?
Yes.
They would have been seriously compromised. There would be no accountability. There would be no independence. There would be employees. They could be suspended. They could be fired. But there would be no accountability. There would be no protection for patient rights, and it would just be a fiasco.
Yes.
But despite the fact that we are independent practitioners,
yes,
the hospital are a law unto themselves.
Yes. Now, let's move slightly, Doc, to then the role of the statutory body that you are leading in terms of situations where there is alleged medical negligence or malpractice, because my understanding is that the profession, you are there to actually regulate, ensure compliance, and to protect the public. Shouldn't that have been maybe the first point of call before people went to court, or am I clouded in my mind?
Well, before you go there, let us not lose the point that where we started, that there will be three parties that are taking care of the patient. And when something goes wrong, it could be in the areas of responsibility of any one of the three parties.
Yes.
So the question may arise that if one party wants to be player and referee, it could cover its responsibilities up.
Yes.
If I work in a hospital,
yes,
and I do certain types of procedures that will require certain types of post-op care,
yes,
it's the hospital that provides those facilities.
Yes.
There are some of our colleagues that would do procedures that would require ICU.
Yes.
When all of us take a patient to a theater, there's a recovery room. That room has to be adequately equipped.
Yes.
In case there's a mishap.
Yes.
Post the procedure, so that the recovery staff, the recovery sister, and the anesthetist have everything at their disposal to deal with any emergency that might arise.
Yes. Now,
so we have something like this. That aspect needs to be looked into as to whether was the environment appropriate for that intervention.
Yes, because the failure could have been at that level.
The failure could have been at that level. Yes. The failure could have been the clinician not recognizing it. The failure could have been no availability of necessary tools to save that life.
Yes. You know, it reminds me, Doc, in 2001, I had a breast lump, which after many tests, it was still not ruling out, malignancy. So I went to one of the hospitals and, so that they could remove the lump and then they could check whether there's any problem or not. But as I was being admitted, I was made to sign something that says, should anything go wrong, I'm basically absolving the hospital from any negligence, So if that happens to patients, and I refused. I said, what if an oxygen tube that is supposed to give me oxygen whilst I'm whatever, something goes wrong? So I think I need to limit the fact that you want to absolve 100%. I need to limit that. So what I'm trying to say here is, it seems that proactively, one of these parties always looks at protecting themselves. But anyway, you can continue, Doc.
But that becomes a gap in our society in terms of protecting the public and creating a safe working environment for the professionals.
Yes.
And that's something that should be part of the lessons from this case and from this tragedy. So you then ask, what is the process? The process is defined in law. Since the late 1800s, we used to call it an anesthetic death before. It is now no longer called that. It's death in relation to a medical procedure.
Oh, okay. Okay, I'm still in the old way of just
it is no longer that.
Anesthetic death.
No, it's not an anesthetic death. It's a death related to a medical procedure because it could be caused by the surgical intervention, the operation itself, lack of facilities, lack of equipment, or things to do with the anesthetic. So that's why it is no longer called an anesthetic death.
I've learned something new too.
And the law is that an inquest, we have an Inquest Act.
Yes.
So anybody that dies
Unnaturally
undergoing a medical procedure, it's an unnatural death, and a medical inquest is automatic. It is not optional. And a postmortem needs to be done, and an inquest docket needs to be opened.
Mm.
That is automatic. That's what needs to follow.
Mm.
What you do not have is that there's a death, and one of the parties takes the law into its own hands and suspends the other parties from their facility.
Mm.
That's an unethical act, clearly unlawful. But I guess saying it's unlawful will depend on the vigilance and the knowledge of the authorities. Now it looks like the authorities either didn't know, didn't care, or ignored the Inquest Act. And
so
that's
in this case,
the biggest tragedy.
Yes. So have we had an inquest in this situation, or it has not happened?
No, we've had a murder trial.
So no inquest took place.
What we've seen in the papers, no one has spoken of an inquest. The doctors were arrested in December and they were charged with a criminal act, and they've been going to court. When what is supposed to happen is that there should be an inquest, a magistrate, an assessor, and facts need to be led. And the inquest needs to make a determination in relation to that death. That determination might be there's criminal negligence.
Yes.
And one of the three parties has to account, having contributed to the death. Or it may absolve any parties of any wrongdoing.
Yes.
But you only base it on what comes out of the inquest. So that is automatic. Nobody has to lodge a complaint. Somebody dies under those circumstances, the laws kick in.
Yes.
It's like if you don't have a natural death, a postmortem is compulsory. There are no exceptions. Yes. It's the same thing. The laws kick in. They will never release the body for burial unless a postmortem has been done. If it's an unnatural death. And this is an unnatural death, and there's law that prescribes how the matter should be handled. That was ignored. So that's the first step. So the authorities have no right. They are acting unlawfully in charging the doctors with a criminal act. And to that extent, as soon as the doctors were the profession was humiliated, with the doctors being arrested like common law criminals and being taken to court and being charged with culpable homicide. We wrote to the police commissioner and to the NPA, copied the Minister of Police, the Minister of Justice, and copied the Minister of Health.
Mm.
The NPA acknowledged receipt, but we were not given any attention. Now, that's the first issue. Now, the second issue is that for us, in terms of our duties, if a complaint is laid with us, we have a statutory obligation to deal with that complaint.
Yes.
And the process is prescribed. If you have and the complaint can be laid either by the patient, the patient's relative, any member, any other third party, as long as the facts are put on the table.
Yes.
And if the patient is still alive, there's affidavit and there's permission from the patient because there's issues of confidentiality and personal medical records.
Yes.
But anyone can put a complaint to us. And once a complaint is lodged, by law, we have to follow the complaint. Now, the law prescribes that when a complaint has been received, we must the registrar investigates. And after investigations, the registrar then puts questions to the practitioner in relation to that complaint and gives the practitioner the opportunity to provide answers.
The pre-disciplinary process.
Yeah, that's the investigation process.
Okay. Yes.
Okay. And once the registrar has a complaint and the response,
yes,
the matter is then taken to prelim inquiry.
Yes.
Then there's a committee of peers whose decision cannot be changed by council or the board and can only be changed through defined processes of appeal or by appealing to a court of law.
Yes.
Okay. Now, there's also room that if the matter that is being reported is a matter that, from the registrar's perspective, implies that the practitioner might be a threat to society,
yes,
a threat to patients,
yes,
then there's provision in the Act for what we call for the registrar to apply to the board that here are the facts, we would like to have a suspension hearing.
yes,
Because if there's a chance that the practitioner is posing a threat to society, there's a duty to have a suspension hearing.
To protect the public.
Yes, but that suspension hearing is also follows Administrative Justice Act.
Yes.
You can't suspend anybody without representation in this country.
Yes.
So the practitioner will be notified. The pro forma complainant will have made the case.
Yes.
And a suspension hearing committee would be set up by the chair of the relevant board, will be appointed by the chair of the relevant board. It's totally independent, and it'll sit and listen to the pro forma complainant, and the practitioner can come with legal representation to represent themselves at that hearing.
Yes.
And that panel will decide whether a suspension is appropriate or not appropriate. And when necessary, a specialist report can be asked for, and you have an expert provide information. So normally the pro forma will come with the expert statement.
Yes.
And testimony that says this is a serious breach, suspension should be considered.
Yeah.
Okay, so those are the two alternatives.
Yes.
So we can then have a suspension hearing, and if the suspension hearing deems that the practitioner be suspended, they will be suspended and prevented from practicing until the matter is heard at conduct inquiry.
Yes.
So it becomes a precautionary suspension.
Yes.
It is not a censure type suspension.
Yes.
Then the hearing continues.
Yes.
And the matter is prepared for inquiry.
Yes. Now,
but in also instances where the committee will feel there is no need, the practitioner is not a threat, there is no need for a suspension hearing, and it will follow the normal process of the matter being taken to prelim, and prelim has the powers to resolve the matter, or if they feel the matter is of a serious nature, to refer it and prepare it for conduct inquiry.
Yes. So in this case, was there any reporting of the incident, this unfortunate incident, to the Health Professions Council, or
yes,
the parties went straight, to court and dealt with it, from a court perspective?
What happened is that it hit the media.
Yes.
And the doctors were suspended by that hospital before it came to us.
Yes.
And then later, the family and their legal representatives lodged the complaint.
Yes.
And we then followed our due processes.
Yes.
Now, in the process of following those due processes, as I'm explaining, suspension hearings, because this is a serious incident.
Yes.
It's not a minor complaint. It's a major complaint.
Yes.
A family lost a child.
Yes.
A patient has died, and we take those matters seriously.
Yes.
So suspension hearings were arranged for both practitioners.
Yes.
Now, as I explained, you would need to have an expert opinion as a pro forma complainant.
Yes.
And those matters were arranged for prof bill.
Yes.
There were delays with Dr. Munshi. Remember, they are not treated as a combined case.
Yes.
They are treated separately because they account for their actions as independent practitioners.
Yes.
And the suspension hearing of Prof. Bill was completed, I think, in December, and he was suspended.
Yes.
The suspension hearing of Dr. Munshi, the family legal representatives wanted to prosecute Dr. Munshi themselves. So what happened is that the hospital suspended them. A complaint was lodged with us, but the family proceeded with criminal charges against the doctors.
Whilst you guys on the other side, as the statutory body, were actually going through the processes of the suspension hearing.
Yes, remember, the two processes are run independently.
Yes.
But the police, there's prescription that they got to go through an inquest hearing.
Yes.
So what should have happened is that the police should have opened an inquest docket and did their work.
Yes.
And we will concurrently do our work on a complaint that is lodged with us.
Yes.
But there is no place for criminal charges at that point in time.
Yes.
There's no place for criminalizing the profession.
Yes.
Because if this is allowed to stand, it means, Fundile, any patient can go and get you charged criminally for whatever interaction they've had with you where they are unhappy with the outcome. If the outcome is unfavorable, it will then open the doors that patients will go and lay charges. And all of us will be in the criminal courts.
Yes. So was the HPCSA aware of the parallel legal processes as you were
No, we were not aware. We would have presumed that the rule of law is followed in this country.
Yes.
And that the state will act in accordance with the laws of the country and do what they were supposed to do. We would have expected that this is a matter for an inquest and the inquest hearing should be on. It's not our responsibility. It's not even our duty to ensure that it occurs.
Yeah.
But we presumed that it would be occurring. And we thought also because it's now a matter that is in the media, it's a public spectacle, there'd even be assurance that the state would act in accordance with the laws of the country.
Yes. So,
so we only became aware when it was all over that the doctors are being charged.
Yes, because I remember that
handcuffed and they're being dragged to courts.
A number of people, in the profession were quite, taken aback by that, process where the doctors were charged with culpable homicide and all of that, and it caused a lot of, unhappiness. That was, I think, late last year, if I'm not mistaken. Or
yes, it was around the 19th of December or somewhere around there.
Yes.
So
yes.
I spent my Christmas Eve writing letters to the NPA and the police commissioner and the relevant ministers on this matter.
Yes. And you say you got an acknowledgement from NPA, but not
acknowledgement from NPA, but not from the police commissioner. Remember, the others were being copied. We were not asking the Minister of Police or the Minister of Justice to act. But we wanted them to be aware because we saw the gravity and the injustice and the threat to the practice of medicine and to medical practitioners of this act from the state apparatus.
So with the letters that, HPCSA wrote, through yourself, yes, there was acknowledgement, but was there anything afterwards, in terms of understanding the seriousness of what you were raising as the statutory body that is in charge of the professionals?
They were not responding. We were so concerned that we also briefed our minister. So we didn't just send him correspondence.
Yes.
We discussed this matter with the minister, and he was also equally concerned.
Yes.
And he had hoped that the matter would be done properly.
Yes.
So I mean, all we could do is just to copy him, and we had hoped that at the interministerial meetings or cabinet, they would caucus on this matter and it would be dealt with lawfully.
Yes.
So what happened then is that Prof. Bill is suspended.
Yes.
Dr. Munshi's suspension hearing is continuing.
Yes.
The family legal representatives want to take the law into their own hands. And we say, no, we are competent enough to do our job.
Yes.
An expert opinion comes in.
Yes.
And a suspension is deemed not appropriate for Dr. Munshi based on the facts.
Yeah.
So the matter now was being processed through the normal channels of the matter going to prelim. So any notion that we acted too speedily on any of these matters is devoid of any truth. I mean, it is now more than 9 months since the matter was reported to us, and the matters have not been completed. So it cannot be said that we're giving it special attention and it's been put on fast track. It can't happen in that manner because things are prescribed. When we write to you as a practitioner, you have 40 working days to provide an answer.
Yeah.
And remember also, when you have these things, you have challenges where if you have a hearing, you want the hospital records, you want this, and hospitals are not under our jurisdiction.
Yes.
And they refuse to give us records. So you don't have information because we don't have legislation that prescribes that as a statutory body that has a duty to society, hospitals should be compelled by law to make the records available. We have serious challenges getting medical records from hospitals. They are not under our jurisdiction and we have no authority over them.
Yes. So in that situation, was there then a point where the family of the deceased patient felt, that they're not happy with the fact that Dr. Munshi was not suspended? Maybe putting question marks around your process as a HPCSA.
Well, we follow due process.
Yes.
And any decision could be appealed.
Yes.
So they could appeal that decision to the courts if they so wish.
Yes.
Just like we've had many practitioners that get suspended that have challenged those decisions in court.
Yes.
And the last one we dealt with, the decision upheld, the court upheld the suspension. So there's due process and there's access to the courts from patients and people with means. It would be easy for them if they were not happy with the outcome of the suspension hearing. Firstly, they should have left us to do our job, not try and do our job for us. And they had the right, if they were not happy with that decision, they could take that decision on appeal if they so wished.
Yes.
Even the pro forma complainant could appeal the decision of the committee if they felt strongly that this practitioner poses a threat and should be suspended. Yes. There are those provisions in the law.
Yes. So after the decision by HPCSA that Dr. Munshi will not be suspended, what was then the process afterwards?
The process was the matter has been prepared and it was going to serve at a prelim committee so that they could look at the matter and make a decision.
What, in terms of culpability? Or
the process is that when a matter goes to prelim,
yes,
prelim looks at it. Prelim is the first court that we have,
yes,
of our own. So they have the powers to finalize a matter.
yes.
So they can look at what is being presented, the case from the registrar and the explanation from the doctor, and they can say, there's no case here. They accept the explanation of the doctor and the matter is dealt with in that manner. Yes. Or if it's a minor offense, they can conclude that the practitioner is guilty and do what they are empowered to do in terms of the act. A caution, a reprimand, a fine, remedial teaching, reparations for the patient. For example, if you did a procedure that didn't work or there are fee disputes, they can ask you to repay certain amounts, but it's not about civil damages. That's yes. outside what we do.
Yes.
But we can do restitution.
Yes.
At any of our levels.
Yes.
But if they feel this is a serious breach of professional conduct, and it's a matter that needs to be heard properly,
yes.
it then goes to conduct inquiry. So they are empowered to conclude on minor matters.
Yes.
And serious breaches, they've got to create a charge sheet, and it goes to formal conduct inquiry, where a committee will then be appointed, and the practitioner can have legal representation, and the complainants can also be represented.
So this matter had not reached that point.
As I explained, Prof. Bill was suspended,
yes.
and the matter was being prepared for conduct inquiry.
Yes, yes.
Dr. Munshi was not suspended, and the matter was going to prelim.
Yes, yes.
Okay?
Yes.
But yes. The concurrent unlawful behavior of the authorities was to subject them to the criminal court and to treat them as criminals. So what happened about 2 weeks ago, I think they were in court 2 or 3 weeks ago. We don't know what happened in court. Okay, but the matter was remanded to November. Prof. Bill got in touch with us complaining about being treated as a criminal for a professional act and being dealt with unlawfully. So we were preparing repeat letters to the NPA. Because remember, when we were kept in the dark and not being informed, we didn't know whether the case was going on or the case was not going on, whether it's been dropped, whether they are having an inquest. We were just kept in the dark. But when we were made aware that they were still being pursued as criminals, we were preparing to re-engage with the NPA on this matter. And this unfortunate incident occurred. So we had to alter the correspondence that went to them because it had not gone out. We have since written to them. And this time around, they received the letters, I think on Thursday.
Yes.
And both the police commissioner and the MPA have acknowledged the receipt of our latest letter. And we've now still copied the 3 ministers and escalated it to the head of state.
Yes. So now let's look at the incident itself. You know, obviously we're not police, but just from far, what is reported in the media is the fact that, you know, late Dr. Munshi, there was some form of bumper bashing or, you know, ramming of his car from the back. He got out to inspect, and then, you know, he was, you know, shot 6 shots, and then, you know, and the car where those people, you know, came out from had no number plate. Now, this has sent, shivers, it has scared a lot of healthcare professionals. The day after, a number of private healthcare professionals actually went and demonstrated outside the home of the late Dr. Munshi. Now, as HPCSA, how do you see, this situation? You reported in the media as saying it's tantamount to vigilantism.
We are cautious as the HPCSA, and I'm cautious as the president of the statutory body, not to cast any aspersions around this matter.
Okay, lovely.
But we are clearly aggrieved by the gruesome and brutal killing of a colleague and a member of the profession. We will not make any insinuations because we are mindful that a family has lost a child and they are entitled to be given answers as to what happened. And there's a legal process of an inquest and our own processes to provide those answers. But there is no place for this type of behavior. There's no place for what happened to Dr. Munshi to happen to any one of us. And we must all be mindful of the fact that what happened to Dr. Munshi can happen to any one of us. We live in a lawless society. We live in a society devoid of ethics. And this is exactly the point that we've been trying to make from December. That when you criminalize the profession, you are putting us at risk. And our intervention of December was trying to prevent this type of thing occurring. I'm informed that there is a practitioner in Pietermaritzburg that had the unfortunate incident of a patient dying in her hands. And the husband to the deceased and 3 of his brothers came to the practice apparently and beat her to a pulp. So we are not blind to the society that we live in. And we were particularly concerned that when the state treats us as criminals, they are exposing us to danger. They are putting targets on our backs. So we were trying to act early on a proactive and preventative basis. But we have no opinions as to who is behind it. But it would be disingenuous to claim that this is not related to them being treated as criminals by the justice system. And what I say to people, I say, if you look at countries, anything that becomes criminalized in Africa, it's like a license to abuse those that are criminalized. They are no longer human, they have no rights. In countries where homosexuality is criminalized, those people are being killed. So when you criminalize the profession, and this is the point that we were making to the NPA, when there's provisions for accountability and a legal framework, you're basically putting a target on our backs and you are making it difficult for us to practice our profession. And I am not tone deaf to the fact that it looks like for some unscrupulous lawyers, the medical profession is their next target.
Yes, I was actually going to raise that, Doc. I was going to raise that.
Disturbing.
Yes, I was going to raise that, just from far, there's been a number of law firms and lawyers who have been dealing with personal injury, with the road accident fund. But with screws being tightened that side, and also the fund becoming less, cash flush, nowadays, there seems to be a move towards issues of medical negligence. And, the same strategies that were used on the other side are being used. So in South Africa, there is an increase in litigation relating to medical negligence.
I ask myself, the lawyers representing the family, did they not know that we have an Inquest Act? How were they advising their clients? Or the law doesn't matter to them as long as you are paying. And that is problematic. I mean, we got to deal with this issue of the lawyers and the profession and we becoming cannon fodder. I mean, the issue of litigation, the issue of not having a legal framework to deal with patients that are harmed while receiving care, not looking at no-fault compensation systems, is putting us at harm as a profession and putting us at harm as a society.
Yes. I mean,
and the only people that benefit from that will be the legal profession.
Yes.
Not society and not the medical, not the healthcare professions.
Yes. I was about to say,
urgently need to talk about that and institute a no-fault compensation system, because that'll help. Because even if you are poor, if you are harmed, there has to be a way of you being taken care of. It can't be justice for the rich only. And that will ensure that, because it's a no-fault compensation, healthcare professionals will come forward, because it will be in everybody's interest to say, how do we make sure this doesn't happen again?
Yes.
What went wrong? How do we tighten up? Even if nobody was negligent, but how can we do better? That's how we improve in medicine. I mean, I used to go to infant mortality meetings in Natal, in the ONG department.
Yes.
And they were ruthless on each other.
Yes.
Because they were committed to improving the system.
Yes.
The tide in that room made sure that all boats were taken up.
Yes.
They were very professional. It didn't go outside that room, but it informed the institution from doing better.
Yeah.
From ensuring that the next patient will be safer. But you need an enabling environment to be able to do that.
Yes.
It doesn't exist in this country. And what people also don't realize is that all these costs, the costs of the healthcare system, are always borne by the patient.
Yes.
So if you put lawyers in this space, it just makes care more expensive, and you're adding a non-essential expense line item in the health budget.
Yes.
That can become your biggest liability and your biggest area of expenditure.
Yes. So we are now at this point where doctors are anxious. Obviously, like you said, we are in a country where there's a high rate of crime, I mean, hijackings and everything else, So what happens out there, doctors are not immune, from being victims to those things. However, this particular incident has actually scared a lot of doctors, some of them are actually even vocalizing that they may need to change their mind and think about, going to work elsewhere, which obviously will be very negative for the country where we already have a shortage of doctors, especially in some of the, specialities. So what do you think is the impact, to the profession now, besides, the fact that we're scared, as healthcare, professionals because of what has happened, but what do you think is it's the impact of this to the profession, the practice of medicine going forward?
What I've said in some of the interviews that I've had post this, remember that I'm a practicing doctor.
Yes.
And this can happen to me.
Yes.
And I'm mindful of the fact that we shouldn't think it won't happen to us.
Yes.
Now, it's one thing to be in the middle of a pandemic and to applaud colleagues that are in the front line,
yes,
that are putting their lives on the line to help society.
yes.
But it's another when you're now getting to the point where, even in the absence of a pandemic, by helping society, you are exposing yourself to be murdered. That's a totally different paradigm. And what society did to Dr. Munshi can happen to any of us at any time for any reason. So this is not something that should be taken lightly. And I'm not going to prescribe what each individual is going to do. But there is no way I would talk anybody that would want to look at an alternative way of earning a living.
Yes.
Or looking for a safe environment to practice medicine. I cannot fault anybody that would be doing that issue. But I am committed to this country. And I'm going to ensure that if I have to spend my last penny to fight this, I will fight it. People might not be aware, but we are fighting for our soul as a medical profession. We are fighting for the privilege and the right to serve society. This needs to be reversed. And it shouldn't be about the fact that, oh, maybe they've been absolved. No. No. There needs to be acknowledgement that what was done to Prof. Bill and Dr. Munshi by the police and the prosecuting authority is wrong. And they have to acknowledge and commit that it will never, ever happen again. If there is no public acknowledgement, none of us should feel safe. None of us should feel safe. I have one colleague dying on my watch. And I will not enable an environment for any other of my colleagues to go the same way.
Yes.
We have a challenge where, as a medical profession in particular, we're not respected by the society we serve. This is a day for us to rise for our rights. The state we serve will create a chamber for magistrates and for judges, but it will not create a chamber for medical doctors so that we are able to negotiate for our working conditions directly with them. That's how much we valued as healthcare professionals. They will not create a chamber for psychologists, nurses, for the professionals that put their lives on the line to serve society. Look at what is happening with COVID.
We're losing colleagues almost on a daily
The times for vuvuzelas in Jerusalem are over. We need to be appreciated by the society we serve. We cannot sit in environments where the government wants to renege on promises they've made and wage negotiations that were agreed upon with the health sector. It cannot be. So we need to stand up. So on this matter, we need to ensure that they acknowledge wrongdoing, or they clearly announce that no, this is how we're going to deal with US professionals. Unfavorable outcomes, you'll be charged criminally. What is an unfavorable outcome? Is it when a patient dies? Is it when a surgical outcome was not to the patient's expectation? It becomes an open field. And we will be cannon fodder. So it's not about living the country. I'm born here, I'm raised here, I'm trained here. My commitment is here. But it does not mean my life has to be cheapened. And it's time for doctors to be informed about what makes them professionals. I mean, we show astounding levels of ignorance. People don't even understand the importance of self-regulation. They don't understand the need for a statutory body. They don't understand the importance that it be funded by us and not by the state. They don't understand the importance and the protection that we have. You know, what is assigned to a healthcare profession? It is unlawful for anyone not sanctioned by that statutory body to be engaged in those practices.
Yes.
And those responsibilities lie with the statutory bodies.
Yes.
And for that privilege, our first duty is not to ourselves. Our first duty is to our patients.
Yes.
And consequently, people don't understand. The statutory body's first duty is to protect the public and guide the profession.
Yes.
When I was the chair of the association,
Yes.
I brought that value system into the association.
Yeah.
I told the association, we are a membership organization, we're voluntary. But if I lead, it's not doctors first, it's patients first. When we marched to Parliament around the healthcare system and HIV/AIDS issues, it was not about us, it was about our patients. And I will always uphold those values. But that does not mean, as a statutory body, we do not have a responsibility to ensure a safe working environment.
Yes.
I am at the end of my term.
Yes.
And I don't outsource my safety to anybody else. I am a practitioner. In this matter, I will pursue even as an ordinary practitioner. I will ensure that we work together to challenge how the police and the prosecuting authorities are treating us as a profession. And we will also rise to deal with the imminent threat of unscrupulous legal practitioners that have targeted us as their next honeypot.
Yeah. In fact, I mean, at this moment, if you look at almost all provincial departments, they now have to put aside, or budget, contingency budgets, for billions, of alleged, I would say alleged, negligence. But also, I mean, there's also a lot of criminality even within that. Syndicates that are stealing files and stuff. But anyway, that's not for me to talk about that. But the point
I think it's
that sector that is into medical negligence. They work with some of the government employees to make sure that files that the employer could use to defend cases disappear, so that the cases are then not easily defended in court.
Yeah, but you see, when we started, I said, this is our George Floyd moment. So if we're going to honor Dr. Munshi, we're not only going to deal with the issues that were applicable to him, we're also going to deal with all of these other issues so that we can encourage our offspring to go into this noble profession. And we got to work collectively to create a safe working environment.
Yes.
And ensure that our autonomy and our independence is not threatened.
Yes.
And make doctors understand that the only thing of value that we should uphold, that will keep us as a profession, is our ethics.
Yes.
And we should continue, despite all challenges and against all odds, we should continue to put our patients first.
Indeed, indeed. We just have 5 more minutes, Kgosi. I want you to just wrap up, a message to the colleagues who joined in, and also the members of the public who joined in our conversation. Just, as you said, this is a George Floyd, moment for the medical profession. I think there's an element of reassurance that's needed, by the colleagues who are anxious, but also the public also needs to understand, because some of these things, they don't really understand them very well. And some of them don't understand why were the doctors up in arms, marching, or putting placards outside Dr. Munshi's house. At least now you've been able to clarify what the issues are. But I would like you to just, have the next 5 minutes to just wrap up here.
I think, sometimes I always get concerned about the restraints of incumbency.
Yes.
And I'm glad that in a few days, I will not be restrained by the office of the HPCSA.
Yes.
And I look down and I say, freedom is coming my way.
Yes.
And I will be free to be an activist. As I travel the world, people have said, how do you describe yourself? I'm saying I'm trained and qualified and I practice as an ophthalmologist by training, but I'm a health activist by choice. And there's much, much more that needs to be done to save the profession. And we need to, as individuals, rally around that. We need to work together to knock on the door of the police commissioner and say, never again will you treat one of us as a criminal. We need to go to Advocate Batoli's door and say there are provisions. Do not treat us like criminals. You can't prosecute us like criminals. If that's what you want to do, change the law so that we know as doctors that in South Africa, you practice at your own risk. Because this incident has reduced us to that, practicing at our own risk. It is not an appropriate environment to promote ethical conduct from doctors. And we have, it's in our hands as doctors to create an environment conducive to ethical practice of medicine.
I hear you. What about those people who, and I'm just going to play a devil's advocate here, Doc. What about those people who feel that sometimes, the statutory body is a body of almost like an old boys club that protects each other and give, sanctions that are not really heavy to deter people from doing wrong things? Do you think there is a need to engage the public more around, the role of the HPCSA and what it does in the event that one of its members, is found wrong?
I think my contention is that by law, our things are open to the public.
Yes.
So I would encourage the public to be more engaged so that instead of joining a chorus, you don't know where it started, you don't know whether it's based on facts. They come in as the law allows them to, and they can make critical observations and give us feedback so that we can improve the system.
Thank you very much.
To sit out there and make noise like an empty drum, which is not based on fact, is not helpful for all parties. Because on one side, you have the public saying it's a body-body system. On the other side, you have practitioners saying it is anti-practitioner.
Yes.
So it's a thankless job. It's a job where neither of the parties will be satisfied.
Yes.
You just need to ensure that you're doing it properly, you're doing it ethically.
Yes.
And remember that as a statutory body, our aim is to guide the profession.
Yes.
We don't have enough doctors in this country or enough healthcare professionals. So our aim is to put doctors back on the proper track. We can't afford to be taking anyone out, but trust me, anybody that is a threat to society will be taken out. We have people that have been removed from the register. I mean, if we were a body club, there would be no doctor that gets removed from the register. There's still a lot of room for improving our processes.
Yes.
It's bedeviled by legalization.
Yes.
It has become less professional. People will take a small matter where they just need to be contrite, listen to colleagues, and improve on their behavior. They get confused by legal representation, and they hide behind legalese instead of putting themselves up for peer review. And the essence of peer review, and if it is done in a professional environment and we decontaminate it with from the legalese, we'll be able to tell people as colleagues that stop this, this is how you get back on track.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
But now there's continuances, they duck and dive, they want things postponed, they don't come, files get lost, hospitals don't give us records, hospitals don't keep records, doctors don't keep records. There's all those issues that impede us. I mean, I've been talking to the minister for the last few years to say, it's long overdue that there be an electronic health record.
Yes.
That is law. That is formatted, that is standard. Any health encounter has to put information in that record, whether it's from the doctor's perspective or the hospital's perspective or the nurse's perspective or the psychologist's perspective. It has to be on record. It has to be in a standard format. It has to be transportable throughout the country, and it has to be interpreted in a common place, so that we can get the feedback, information, and data to improve the healthcare system.
Yes. And is he listening to that?
Yes, he's listening to that. But, you know, until health becomes a national competence,
yes,
we will never fix the healthcare system.
Yes, yes, yes. And by that, you mean that, the competence of delivery is actually at provincial level,
yes,
right?
But the system is
almost as coordinates, but the power is actually there.
The system is one system, you just deliver there. I mean, if we had 11 different sources or 9 different revenue services, we wouldn't be collecting any money.
Yeah.
Because everybody would be doing what they want. The rate in that province would be different to the rate, the ability to collect there, friends won't pay. It would be a mess. That's where health is.
Yeah.
Unless health, you can't talk about national health insurance and you don't talk about health being a national competence.
Yes, 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 yes. That was going to be my parting question to you.
They have to be concurrent discussions.
Yes. I was about to ask you now to say, with NHI that is supposed to come on stream around 2026, some of the things that we were complaining about, don't you think they also need to be addressed? I'm talking about for the future now. Make sure that in this NHI bill and whatever, some of these things, are actually addressed. Yes, one understands.
No, but the issues that we've been addressing, the issues of conduct, have to be addressed by primary legislation.
Yes, okay.
For example, on the issues that we're talking about, disciplinary procedures, they are indifferent to your nationality, your citizenship, or the sector that you work in.
Yeah.
The need for an inquest, it's indifferent to whether you died in a public hospital or a private hospital. So in relation to what we've done, things are done on a national basis. Yes. It's one framework. Yes. You don't have a different framework for the private sector or a different framework for KwaZulu-Natal.
Yeah.
It works. Yes. But we got to sort out the issue of, the legalities consuming us. That will also be dealt with on a national basis. But that also wants a statutory framework to write down, no fault compensation system, so that all of us contribute to a common pool that looks at those issues. And the outlook of that issue is not a mishap must make you a millionaire.
Yeah.
It's how to avoid mishaps.
Yes.
How to take them out. And that there's nominal, not future earnings, future treatment, those things should be taken out.
Yes.
Of any compensation framework.
And in fact, I think the MEC of Gauteng, there was a case, I think late last year, that that is pointing towards that direction of sort of like capping, the no-fault system, but obviously
it can't be done piecemeal. It can't be done by the MEC of Gauteng. It has to be part of national legislation. It has to be an act that comes from parliament. It has to be the law of the country.
Indeed.
And all of us know that when we use the healthcare system,
Yeah.
these are the rules, these are the terms and conditions of using the healthcare system.
Yes, yes, yes. Kgosi, thank you very much. You and me, I think we gifted when it comes to words. But this has been a very enlightening discussion, even for myself as a medical practitioner. And we will be circulating the YouTube link of this particular discussion, because I think a lot of people need to hear and understand, some of the issues that you clarified here today. And I hope that based on that, the professionals in the healthcare space will also take time to think and see how they can contribute towards addressing the issues that have been raised. And one also hopes that the other stakeholders, your NPA, your SAPS, can also learn from this case and see how they do better going forward. So I want to thank you, Kgosi, for giving me over an hour of your time, when you spend so much of your time in a board meeting today, but you're still able to be here, at this time.
Yeah, no, I also want to thank you for the opportunity, but I want to leave you with something to think about.
Yes.
If you went out to the doctors in the country and you asked them, what's the difference between the Medical Association, the different societies, and the Health Professions Council or the Medical and Dental Board?
Yes.
9 out of 10 don't know the difference.
They will know or they won't know.
They won't know it. 9 out of 10 won't be able to tell you that this is what the association does, this is what its purpose is.
Yeah.
This is what the statutory body does, this is what its purpose is. They wouldn't even have considered to say, in terms of your livelihood,
yeah,
which one of the two is critical?
I think the one that
not
gives you a
able
license
to operate as a doctor. They won't know.
Yeah.
They won't know. They all sit in pigeonholes.
Yeah.
And they don't understand what are the things that allow them to have this privileged position.
Yes.
Of what you do, others can't do to society. And what that means. And what is the value.
For a nominal fee of less than 2,000 a year,
Yeah. And then they go and pay 10,000 rands to a society. And they moan about the 2,000 rands they pay to what, if that didn't exist,
they wouldn't have the license to practice.
They wouldn't exist.
Yeah.
I don't understand that.
Yes.
And it's frightening.
It is. Yeah, it is. It is. It is. Yeah, it is. But I think within HPCSA, is there a wing or a unit that is meant to engage? I know there are those newsletters that come through every, monthly or quarterly. Just make people understand, and nowadays there's even, the technology. So some of this could be a little easier now to engage.
Yeah, no, we can do more. We can do more. We've had road shows, etc., etc. But it takes a crisis to wake up. It takes a crisis to wake up. And I will have a small envelope for the person that succeeds me as chair of the board and the one that succeeds me as president of council in terms of how they can take it forward.
Yeah.
Because we now at a point where if post-COVID, if we had time, I would have a session like this at least once a month with the people on the register on various topics so that we could engage.
Yeah, but anyway, I know you're saying you are on your way out, but If that is something you want, it can be arranged.
I think it is something that would be useful.
Yeah, it could be arranged. I've got the facility, and this platform really is primarily around issues of healthcare, advocacy, health promotion, dealing with current affairs issues and stuff. So, so if there's a need for such, even to the person who will succeed you, we can talk.
Yeah, but there's also, for various reasons, I'm in the twilight of my clinical career.
Yeah.
But I'm just beginning in terms of health advocacy.
Yes.
And health activism.
Yes.
And I will be active in that space.
Yes.
Okay. Till I am no longer capable of being useful to society. Then
this is not the last time we are chatting. We will talk out of this and see how to make things happen going forward.
And thank you for the opportunity. And if the need arises, for example, I'm not sure where the case is. We will be informed officially.
Yeah.
If the case is over, we now have to concern ourselves about the safety of the surviving colleague, Prof. Bill. And that should not be taken lightly.
Yes.
I do not take it lightly. I take it personally that Dr. Munshi was lost in the manner that he was lost.
Yes.
And we all have to ask ourselves, is there anything that any one of us could have done to ensure that this was not the outcome?
Yes.
This is not what we're dealing with right now.
Yes.
And I always ask people, just become an atypical South African.
Yeah.
Just ask yourself what Mother Teresa would say. Stop moaning and ask yourself a question. How can I contribute positively to make a difference?
Yes. Yes.
Moaning changes nothing.
Yes.
But all of us can contribute to turning the wheel to where it should go.
Yes.
As Barack Obama quotes his American ancestors.
Yeah.
The wheel of justice moves slowly.
Yes.
The wheel of the universe moves slowly, but it bends towards justice.
Yes.
But it does not bend on its own.
Yes.
It bends towards justice because all of us are doing the little that we can to help it bend in that manner. It doesn't bend on its own.
Yes.
So justice for Dr. Munshi lies in the hand of every medical practitioner in this country. And you got to ask yourself, what did you do to ensure that what happened to Dr. Munshi doesn't happen ever again to any one of us or to any other healthcare professional?
Yes. Thank you, Prof. Kgosi. I want to thank all the viewers who have been glued to this discussion. It's always good to hear from the people who are in these, positions, like Dr. Kgosi as the president of the HPCSA and the chairman of the council. This kind of information we got from him, it's not easy to get it, from news clips here and there. But to have 90 minutes of time with him, it's a privilege. So, Prof. Kgosi, thank you very much.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yes.
And I'd like, in particular, just to wish you well in what you're doing. It's essential for the nation.
Yes.
And I wish you God's blessings, and that what you're involved in will move from strength to strength.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Prof. Kgosi. Thank you to all our viewers. All right. Thank